We're counting down the top 10 retro Canadian breakfasts you forgot existed. A journey through lost cereals, maple-scented toaster treats, festival-born pastries, and the vanished classics that once filled our family tables. From cozy weekend rituals to breakfast foods erased by changing tastes and corporate decisions, you'll relive the sights, sounds, and smells of mornings gone by, and maybe discover some surprises along the way. Which forgotten breakfast earned the #1 spot? Let's start our countdown with number 10. Saturday mornings once belonged to a gentle bear with a honey-sweet grin and a jingle that still lingers in the mind. Can't get enough of that sugar crisp. In the late 1970s and early 80s, Canadian kids poured big bowls of post-sugar crisp, the air in the kitchen thick with the cereal's toasted honey scent, while the TV played Nelvana's softly animated Sugar Bear commercials. Unlike his brash American cousin, Canada's Sugar Bear strolled through maple forests and joined pickup hockey games, his voice as mellow as a lazy weekend. These ads, crafted by Toronto's Nelvana studio, aired between cartoon blocks on CBC and CTV, cementing Sugar Crisp as the unofficial snack of Saturday morning rituals. In 1979, a special CBC contest even let kids mail in box tops for a shot at cartoon-themed prizes. But by the early 90s, new rules about advertising to children meant fewer mascots and less sugary charm on TV. The cereal itself survived, but the magic faded as mascot ads disappeared, leaving only the echo of that jingle and the memory of honey-dusted fingers during morning cartoons. Hostess cereals once lined Canadian breakfast tables, their boxes bright with maple leaves and cartoon mascots. In the 1980s, maple-flavored Hostess toasted oats and cornflakes weren't just for home. They were handed out in school breakfast programs from Toronto to Thunder Bay. Teachers poured them into paper bowls, and if you were lucky, you'd find a maple leaf sticker tucked inside, part of a 1985 promotion that turned snack time into a mini Olympics. The taste was unmistakably Canadian, sweet, toasty, and just a hint of maple that clung to your fingers. But by 1991, a memo from Ontario's Ministry of Education called for high-sugar cereals to be dropped from school menus. Health Canada's guidelines soon followed, and by 1992, Hostess cereals disappeared from classrooms almost overnight. The company's maple variants never gained the same foothold at home, and without the daily ritual of school breakfast, the boxes faded from grocery aisles. For many, the memory lingers. A flash of maple, a sticker sheet, and the quiet clatter of spoons before the bell rang. A kitchen fills with the unmistakable scent of maple as a pair of Eggo waffles pops from the toaster. This was a school morning ritual for countless Canadian kids in the late 1980s and early 90s. Eggo's maple flavor, sold only in Canada, wasn't just a syrup afterthought. The waffles themselves carried a sweet, woodsy aroma that hung in the air long after breakfast ended. Bilingual boxes sat stacked in freezers, each one stamped with a red maple leaf and promises of a true Canadian start to the day. In 1988, a special Calgary Olympics edition even pressed a maple leaf right onto the waffle, a detail now prized by collectors. But by 1998, the maple Eggo quietly vanished. A Kellogg's bulletin to grocers cited rising ingredient costs and factory consolidation. Real maple flavor just didn't fit the new supply chain math. The decision came down to efficiency: fewer unique products, fewer specialized ingredients, and more focus on North American standards. For many, the loss was more than just a change in breakfast. It meant the end of those steam-filled mornings and the comfort of a flavor you couldn't find anywhere else. A bell above the door chimes, and the scent of fresh coffee drifts through a Tim Hortons packed with regulars. In the late 1980s and 90s, breakfast at Tim's meant more than a double-double and a donut. Each region had its own morning favorites. In Ontario, the Western omelette sandwich was layered with peppers, ham, and cheese, pressed between a pillowy English muffin. Out west, date bran muffins, dense, just sweet enough, waited in baskets behind the counter, baked from recipes that varied by franchise. Regulars ordered by habit, and staff knew who wanted extra cheese or a muffin warmed with butter. In 1986, a simple contest changed breakfast forever. Roll Up the Rim to Win appeared on paper cups, turning every coffee run into a small adventure. Posters promised prizes, but the real reward was the ritual. Friends comparing winnings, parents letting kids do the rolling, the sound of cups cracking open in the car before school. As Tim Hortons grew into a national giant, head office sent out a memo in 2001. All locations would serve the same menu, coast to coast. The Western omelette and regional muffins quietly vanished, replaced by standardized fare. Some old-timers remember asking for their favorite, only to be met with blank stares from new staff. A few stubborn franchisees in small towns kept the old recipes going for loyal customers, but by 2005, even those holdouts faded. What remains is the memory of a breakfast shaped by place, a time when your local Tim's felt like a second kitchen and the thrill of rolling up the rim was still new. A carton of milk, a pastel packet, and a frantic weekday morning. This was the scene in thousands of Canadian kitchens during the 1980s. Carnation instant breakfast promised a full meal in a glass, ready in seconds. The powder dissolved with a few quick stirs, sending up a sweet malty aroma that lingered as kids gulped down chocolate or vanilla before racing for the bus. The commercials from 1984 showed parents in pressed shirts, pouring the drink while news radio played softly in the background, selling the idea that a busy family could still start the day together, even if breakfast was sipped on the go. For many, those pastel packets meant efficiency and a little less morning chaos. A Winnipeg mother wrote in her 1991 diary, "I hand the kids their drinks and we're out the door, no dishes, no fuss." But the convenience that made Carnation instant breakfast a staple also led to its quiet disappearance. By the late 1990s, Nestlé had acquired Carnation and began shifting focus to ready-to-drink bottles, phasing out the familiar pouches in favor of shelf-stable cartons. Nutrition trends, too, played a part. School newsletters and Health Canada guidelines started to frown on quick-fix mixes, nudging families back toward whole foods. Still, for those who remember, there's a certain comfort in recalling that quick swirl of powder, the clink of a glass, and the feeling that even the busiest mornings could be a little bit sweet. A 1986 promotion even let kids collect box tops for a breakfast-to-go lunchbox, a prize as fleeting as the product itself. Steam rises from a paper tray as the first beaver tail of the morning is handed across a wooden counter in Ottawa's Byward Market. It's still dark outside, but already a line of bundled-up families and sleepy university students winds down the cobblestones, their breath mixing with the scent of cinnamon and maple in the crisp winter air. This is breakfast, but not in any kitchen. Here, it's a ritual born on street corners and festival grounds. The Graham family first served beaver tails at Winterlude in 1978, shaping dough by hand and frying each pastry until golden and blistered. By the time the trademark was registered in 1980, the name had become shorthand for a new kind of Canadian morning. Eaten outside, mittened hands, clutching warm pastries while the city slowly woke up. In those early years, a contest on local radio promised free beaver tails to anyone who braved the dawn, and Ottawa Historical Society photos from 1982 capture the crowds. Smiling, cheeks red, pastries steaming in the cold. The classic topping was always cinnamon sugar, but a swirl of maple butter quickly became a favorite, coating lips and gloves alike. In 1985, a brief trademark dispute with a Quebec Fair vendor nearly derailed the tradition, but the Ottawa founders held firm, keeping the recipe and the memory rooted in the capital's markets and festivals. Outside of these street mornings, beaver tails never found a permanent place on home breakfast tables. Maybe that's why the memory lingers. A pastry you had to line up for, best eaten outdoors, with the city waking around you. For many, it's the taste of winter, of family outings, and of a breakfast that belonged to a place as much as a time. A laminated menu lands on a formica table, and the clatter of enamel mugs fills the air. For thousands of Canadian families, the Zellers family restaurant was more than a pit stop. It was a weekend ritual tucked inside the heart of the local mall. The Big Z breakfast, advertised in bold red letters and cartoon eggs on a paper placemat, promised 2 eggs, bacon or sausage, toast, golden hash browns, and a bottomless cup of coffee, all for $1.49 with a Club Z card in 1991. The price was printed right on the window, a beacon for parents juggling errands and hungry kids. Mornings started with the hiss of the open grill and the smell of frying potatoes drifting past racks of winter coats. Kids scribbled on crayon placemats while parents lingered over refills poured from heavy glass pots. The Big Z wasn't just a meal, it was a pause before the day's shopping, a chance to see neighbors and swap stories. Some locations in the Maritimes added baked beans or grilled tomato, giving each plate a local accent. But as the 1990s wore on, the mall began to change. Walmart's arrival and new cost-cutting measures chipped away at Zellers' in-store diners. By the early 2000s, the familiar clink of mugs faded, replaced by food court counters and empty booths. The last Big Z breakfasts were served in 2013 as the chain closed its doors for good. What's left is the memory of a full plate for pocket change, the comfort of a hot meal before a day of errands, and the echo of childhood laughter bouncing off vinyl booths. Aunt Jemima's pancake mix once waited on pantry shelves in tin canisters, their bilingual labels promising a warm, maple-rich breakfast for Canadian families. The packaging itself was a fixture. English and French instructions printed side by side, red and gold lettering curling around scenes of Sunday mornings at the kitchen table. In the 1980s and 90s, the choices went beyond the classic mix. There were maple and butter blends, each with a thick, slow pour and an aroma that filled the house as soon as the cap was twisted off. The syrup clung to pancakes in glossy ribbons, pooling on chipped plates, while kids argued over who got the last drop. Metric measurements and French slogans made these bottles and boxes unmistakably Canadian, a detail now cherished by collectors who search for them at estate sales and flea markets. A 1987 Canadian TV spot showed a family gathered around stacks of pancakes, the mother's voice soft as she offered, "Avec le vrai goût d'érable." The commercial ended with the familiar jingle, "Nothing says good morning like Jemima on your table." For many, that was true. Aunt Jemima's maple and butter syrups weren't just toppings. They were the taste of family gatherings and quiet mornings, the sound of a spoon scraping the bottom of a mixing bowl, the comfort of something familiar in a changing world. But the shelves changed. In the 1990s, corporate memos began trimming regional SKUs, and by 2021, the Aunt Jemima name and its Canada-only flavors vanished entirely, replaced by Pearl Milling Company. No new maple or butter variants arrived. What disappeared wasn't just a product, but a piece of Canadian kitchen history, a memory now preserved in faded cans, old commercials, and the stories families still tell about pancake mornings that tasted like home. A pot on the stove, a wooden spoon, and the first hint of maple steam curling through a quiet kitchen. Cream of wheat, maple, and brown sugar was once a distinctly Canadian comfort. Released in the late 1970s, this porridge was sold only in Canada, its box wrapped in a bold red maple leaf and a smiling cartoon chef greeting you in both English and French. The aroma was unmistakable, warm, sweet, and earthy, filling the house on cold mornings while frost rimmed the windows. For many, it was the taste of winter, a spoonful of creamy cereal, brown sugar melting in swirls, and just enough maple to remind you of sugar shacks and snowbanks. Collectors still search for the old boxes. In 1984, a sealed maple and brown sugar cream of wheat surfaced at a Winnipeg estate sale. Its colors faded, but the maple motif still bright. Stories from vintage packaging forums tell of parents who saved the box as a keepsake, a memory of mornings when breakfast was slow and the world outside was silent. The bilingual packaging, with its cheerful chef and red leaf, has become a rare find, a small artifact of a breakfast that once felt quietly special. By the mid-1990s, the flavor disappeared from shelves. Corporate letters cited shelf space cuts and low sales, part of a broader move to streamline product lines and eliminate region-specific SKUs. The decision was driven by efficiency, not taste, but for those who remember, the loss still stings. The maple and brown sugar variant never returned, and with it went a piece of Canadian breakfast ritual, a bowl that warmed hands and hearts on the coldest days, now preserved only in memory and the odd collector's shelf. A box of mini wheats lands on the breakfast table, its top dusted with a faint trace of maple sugar. For Canadian kids in the 1980s and 90s, this wasn't just cereal, it was a ritual. The scent of maple frosting drifted up as the milk hit the bowl, mingling with the grainy aroma of shredded wheat. Each square was a tiny pillow, crisp on the outside, softening just enough as the maple icing melted. The first spoonful brought a burst of sweetness that clung to the roof of your mouth, a taste so distinct it felt like winter mornings bottled up for year-round comfort. Unlike the plain or frosted versions found elsewhere, maple mini wheats belonged to Canada alone. The boxes wore their heritage proudly: bold maple leaves, bilingual slogans, and, in 1989, a special edition that promised a chance to win a trip to see Team Canada play. Kids tore through boxes to find contest codes, dreaming of Olympic ice and hockey heroes, while parents clipped coupons for back-to-school savings. Some even saved the boxes themselves. Collector treasures now, their colors faded, but the memory still sharp. The cereal's popularity rode high through the late 80s, boosted by TV spots that paired slow-motion pours with the sound of skates on fresh ice. But behind the scenes, the numbers didn't add up. Sales in the US lagged, and the cost of real maple flavor, never cheap, kept climbing. By the late 1990s, Kellogg's sent out a quiet notice to grocers. The maple variant would be discontinued as part of a North American product consolidation. Factories in Ontario and Michigan shifted focus to higher volume SKUs, and the last boxes trickled off shelves by 2000. No replacement ever arrived. For many, the loss was more than just a change in cereal. It was the end of hockey-themed mornings, of contest dreams, of that unmistakable maple scent rising with the steam from a fresh bowl. Years later, A collector in Manitoba found a sealed box at auction and wrote, "I opened it, and the smell hit me. Suddenly, I was back in my dad's kitchen, watching the snow fall outside." Of all the breakfasts that vanished, maple mini wheats may be the one Canadians miss the most. A taste of home, gone, but never forgotten. From the vanished jingles of Sugar Crisp to the unforgettable maple icing of mini wheats at number 1, these 10 retro Canadian breakfasts chart more than just changing tastes. They capture a lost era of family, ritual, and regional identity. Across the list, one pattern stands out. Nearly every entry disappeared not because Canadians stopped loving them, but due to corporate rebrands, policy changes, or the quiet march of standardization. The most shocking losses, like cream of wheat's maple flavor or the iconic Aunt Jemima blends, remind us how even pantry staples can vanish overnight. What qualified these breakfasts wasn't just their taste, but their power to evoke mornings filled with the smell of syrup, the clatter of spoons, and a sense of belonging. In the end, these breakfasts reveal that what we really miss isn't just the food, it's the small, shared moments that made Canadian mornings feel like home. Which of these do you remember most, or did I miss your favorite? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.